On this episode of A Soul's Quest podcast, we're chatting with Lisa De Leon and discussing the trials she's faced in overcoming obstacles. Stay tuned. Lisa, thank you so much for joining us. It is an honor. Seriously, it is an honor to have you here today. Thank you for coming, being a part of our journey, our quest. Our quest.
Absolutely.
Sorry.
Get it right.
I know. Quest. I keep saying journey.
That's your niece.
Quest. That's right. Okay.
Yeah, that's your niece. That's not what this is.
Okay. I got you.
Okay. Excellent.
Well, I'm excited to be here. So
Yeah, it's great to have you. It's great to have you.
Well, we're excited to get to know you better.
Yeah, that's the scary part.
Not at all.
Not at all.
So we don't want to waste any time. So,
Jesse likes to just dive right into things,
But I get that from Omar because our whole thing is like Omar talks about being pitched into the world. Mm-hmm. So when I think about being pitched into the world, I think of like a pitcher, like a real pitcher for like the Yankees. Right. That's my favorite team. Pitching a ball. Right. How fast is that? They just dive right in. They just do it. So
I think of it as, when I was a Boy Scout and a kid wanted to like learn how to swim, and we used to just push them in the water. It's like, go
terrible.
from there.
Yeah.
See, now wasn't mine more wholesome?
That's my husband's take.
Okay.
And that would be more of my
take.
Right. I mean, come on. You can figure it out.
Yin and yang. We complement each other.
Figure it out. Figure it out. This is what life is like. Just figure it out.
No.
So we want to get to know you better. So we always start, how you've seen one of our episodes at least. So we want to start with getting to know you as a young little child. You're probably so cute.
I don't know. My mother cut my hair one time and I don't know. Yeah.
No.
Okay. So tell us about your, where were you born? Mm-hmm. What was your family structure like? Brothers, sisters, your framework.
And we call this like the stage of dependency. Right? Because you're just thrown into the world. And,
pitched.
Yep.
There you go.
Yeah.
See, I was right. She was right. No, absolutely. So I was born in Tallahassee, Florida.
All right.
Florida State.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
My mom was actually a student up there. My father, I was born right after he returned from Vietnam. So I don't have any recollection of my father. But I had an older sister. And I don't remember anything from Tallahassee. We relocated down to, I want to say, Winter Park area later on. So that's where the story starts.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And what are your early memories of Winter Park? I mean, Winter Park is a beautiful, quaint little
it is
city, right outside of north of Orlando, if I'm not mistaken, right?
So
did you guys go to Disney all the time?
Geez, no,
just saying.
I went to the Orlando Library, to be honest with you. That's what I remember.
Okay.
So, I don't know where to begin. So after he returned from Vietnam, apparently he didn't return healthy.
Okay.
That's the story that I was provided with, that he returned as an alcoholic. So my mother moved us to Winter Park, where her grandparents lived.
Okay.
So, her parents, my grandparents. So we lived with them. Mm-hmm. So we lived in an affluent area with my grandparents. So, and grandparents were amazing. I remember trip to the public library, all those things. Not Disney World, but to the enrichment activities.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So
enrichment activities. I like that. I like that.
Disney's not enriching. No. Don't let who hear you say that.
No, I know.
Yeah.
But my grandmother was the sweetest thing ever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So your relationship with your grandparents was really good.
It was.
Yeah.
They had very high expectations. Every time we went to my grandfather's house, and even as an adult visiting, he would always take us on the back patio overlooking the lake and said, you have two options. You go to the military, you go to college. And there was nothing in between. And that's what he instilled in every single one of us. And we're like, oh my God, it's my turn to go on the back patio. We dreaded that.
So that was like a standard type of conversation that you guys had?
Every visit.
Every visit.
Wow.
And this was as a teenager all the way to an adulthood, into adulthood. You either do military or you do the college. Those were his expectations. And if you went away from that.
Was it sort of just like you went to visit and then he's like, all right, come on out on the back porch.
Absolutely.
Really?
Absolutely.
And he sat you down and said, all right.
Absolutely.
This is what's...
When he passed away, I was one of the grandchildren who spoke, and I spoke on that.
Oh,
and
wow.
all of, my cousins, we all made eye contact. Oh God, you too. So we were all really, and it was every visit, and he was adamant. That's what you do. You invest, and he was a very affluent man, and so he made that. He wanted to pass that on.
Yeah, and then so the way to achieve that in his mind was either you're disciplined in the military and go to education. What was your relationship with your mother? How was that relationship growing up with your mother at this stage?
So, we had the typical normal household. It's I guess the realness was hidden. So I had my older sister. My older sister and I shared a father, the same father. She has more memories, of course, than I do. And then my mother, after what happened, and we'll go into that in a minute. My mother remarried and had my younger daughter. So there's three of us. We're all 4 years apart.
Your younger sister.
My younger sister. Sorry. There's three of us. I'm the middle, and we're all 4 years apart. We weren't close.
Okay.
At all. My
Really?
sisters, I'm not at all. My mom, I don't remember any family photos. No I love yous, no hugs, no kisses, but I knew she loved us because of what she provided for us.
Right.
We had everything we asked for, and it's looking back, that's not what love was. And I've learned from that since, but, yeah. No hugs, no kisses.
No hugs.
No I loves you. No, I love you.
Nor were you close to your sisters. Do you think that was a product of that environment?
Absolutely.
Okay, so just...
We weren't taught to be close.
Right.
You compare what I have now with my children, it's complete opposite.
Yeah.
So
when you say that you guys live in the same household,
right.
So what was the day in the life like that you missed that interaction?
So my mother was a registered nurse and a trauma nurse right here in Fort Pierce. And so my mother worked evenings and slept all day. So we kind of, fast forward to high school, we were kind of did our own thing. And again, my mother was amazing. She provided for us, but she worked nights and slept all day, was a very heavy sleeper. So we kind of,
did your thing.
So
got into our trouble and did our thing. So it wasn't, yes, the guidance was there, but not the support, the motivation, and the,
So during this time, was there a defining adult or someone in your life that provided that guidance? I mean, I know you talked about your grandfather putting you in the back, but on a day-to-day basis, someone that was there for you, wasn't. There wasn't.
And we were afraid of my grandfather.
Okay.
My grandmother was nurturing, but my grandfather controlled that as well.
Okay.
We would be in their household, and my grandfather would take us outside to the back patio, and my grandmother would say, "Oh, Joe, leave them be." And I remember this like it was yesterday. "Oh, Margaret, it's fine." And he was very, controlling. And my grandmother didn't work a day in her life, because my grandfather was a pilot and, World War II and just invested. And so she really had no say so. So she was very nurturing. And I believe my mom is her father.
Okay.
So
she has that same type of mentality.
I think it was ingrained in her. She knows no different. She doesn't have the nurturing side.
But what's interesting is that you said that your grandmother was nurturing. So it's interesting that it's like he was the dominating one. So that was the gene, I guess, that went off onto your mom. And then, so how was that? Because you said that she was nurturing towards you guys too. How was that, seeing that difference between her and your mom?
And even as an adult, like my mother, when my grandparents were getting older and not doing well health wise, it still wasn't there. That that nurturing. My grandmother was always there for us, but I didn't see it with my mother. I didn't see that connection between the two of them.
How was the relationship between your grandfather and your mother? Did you see interactions between the two of them? Was there conversations or?
It was, again, expectations and her not meeting those expectations.
Okay.
And, you know, when my father and my mother separated, like I said, the story that I was provided was that he came back unhealthy from Vietnam. And it wasn't until my adult years, a couple of months ago, that I learned the true story behind it. And it's just the characteristics of everyone involved. You know, it makes sense. I understand it now. My heart goes out for my father, for what he was put into, the place that he was put into. But
so tell us a little bit about that, because you said that you just found out about it. Can you tell us what was kept from you and how did it come about to the light?
Absolutely. So I, of course, am in the criminal justice field. I was processing for the federal government, right? And one of the things that you have to do is, of course, list your names and, you know, everything. And then you have a background investigator come to your home. Well, I processed through everything, and he came to my home and he said, well, your name is not you, you know, and I'm like, I'm sorry. And I provided my father's name, my father's, you know, my biological father's name. And there's no record of that name. And so I went to my mom and I said, you know, why is there no record of my father's name? And she told me then, this was when I was 20, 21, told me then that he came back from Vietnam and not healthy, and they needed to get us away from him. I never believed the story. I never believed the story. And I don't know what it was. This a couple of months ago, I said, you know, I need to know the truth, you know, what happened. And she finally told me that my grandfather, my father was an alcoholic. You know, he was unhealthy. And my grandfather offered him to basically sign over his rights and in exchange for not ever having to pay child support or you know, provide for us. And what hurts me is that, you know, his deepest and darkest moment of his life, he was taken advantage of.
Yeah.
You know? And I don't you know, I don't look down upon him at all for making that decision because he wasn't well, but I look down upon my grandparents for putting him in that position. Yeah. And my mother not stepping forward and stopping that from happening.
Yeah.
So
what about, wow, that's a tough realization to find out as an adult, you know, now that you're going through this. But when you were going, when they told you that he was just out of the picture altogether, at that time, what type of interactions do you have with him? Was there any interactions that you had with your father? Any recollections, any memories at all?
None whatsoever.
But did your older sister have any interactions?
My older sister does have memories of him. So yes, not extensive.
Okay.
And it wasn't until he passed away in 2003, I want to state. And his family is from New Smyrna, so of course north of Vero. And so no one has had any contact in years. But all of a sudden, his obituary it made it to our paper in Indian River County. And somebody saw it and brought it to us. And my sister and I, as adults, were able to travel to Massachusetts, where he was buried, and be present for his service with full military Marine honors. He was a Marine, received the Purple Heart, and everything. And we met the family that we have never knew. So that was truly amazing.
So your dad was a hero.
He was. He absolutely was.
And then he returned. Obviously, the Vietnam War was not our brightest moment.
Right.
So he saw the darkness.
Right.
But your grandfather being a World War II veteran,
right,
and understanding the trauma that goes with that was the decision that he decided to make.
Right.
In retrospect, looking back at that situation, how does that make you feel?
It's taught me life lessons. I would never first of all, mental health to me, I understand mental health as an adult.
Mm-hmm.
And I would never, ever put anyone that I loved or care for in that position. And I really do feel like they took advantage of him at his weakest moment.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's devastating.
Yeah, that's gotta. So realizing that, I mean, because it's after finding out and bringing all this to light, was there any interaction with your mother as to questioning why this happened and why was this allowed to happen?
Absolutely. And I did question her because of the story, you know, goes back to when I had my first child.
Okay.
So, and I know, you know, we'll speak about that. There's a pattern of this behavior, and at some point we have to stop that. I understand that this happened in 1973, 1975. But here we are in 2000 and 1996 and 2000, and you know the same mentality is being carried over, and that mentality is wrong. So.
I want to get into well, that was the core somewhat of your family, and what about your experiences in the environment in Winter Park? Your schooling, or I mean, obviously that was elementary school.
That was going to be my question.
Oh,
did you have any friends? Like,
So,
were you? Because you must have had some.
She moved us around a lot, you know.
Okay.
So,
because you said she worked in Fort Pierce.
well,
so
so we were raised in Vero.
Okay.
So after they separated from Tallahassee,
Right.
you know, and she moved to Winter Park, she had us in Winter Park at schools, and then there's a lot of moving.
Okay.
A lot of moving.
So you didn't get to develop relationships, or
No, I mean, my mom will tell me, "Do you remember living in, you know, so and so?" I'm like, "No, I don't remember living in Massachusetts ever." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, no, there wasn't. I don't have a lot of memories of.
So no like school like outings or like friends coming over to spend. I mean, you didn't have very many friends.
So
but
once my mom finally settled in Vero, and she married my I guess you call my stepfather, my sister's father. Life became a little bit more normal. You know, he was a U.S. postmaster, and my mother was the nurse, and you know, life became normal. There was expectations, and there was no affection between the two of them. Still no affection with us, you know, and
and how old were you when?
so this was, goodness, second grade.
Okay, so you're
And
still young.
Yeah, and then they separated before middle school. I want to say they separated maybe fourth grade.
Okay.
Oh wow.
Yeah, they weren't together like too long. And they separated, you know, not pleasantly, you know. And again, my mother, when she was telling me about my real father, said something. Well, I should have never let my dad. Apparently, my dad, her father did something with her husband. Like apparently, his influence got involved with that as well.
Yeah.
My mother, you know, because of the financial backing, my mother let him make all the decisions for her, and you know, it hurt a lot of people around her.
Yeah.
So.
How was your relationship with your stepdad? Although he was there for just a little bit.
Not existent.
Not existent.
I didn't care for him.
No.
It wasn't nurturing. Kind of creepy, if I can
Oh,
say
yeah?
that. Yeah.
You can so say that.
I have
You
this.
just say
I
that.
have this really good vibe with people. Right.
Uh-huh.
First impressions. I think that's why I've been in this field all my life. Yeah.
That's why she likes me so much.
Yeah. I really do.
Tell me more specifically, because there's, you know, I do believe that there's like that your soul speaks to you.
Yeah.
When there's certain people, and you know, it's like, okay, I could.
And at a
vibe.
young age to
Yeah.
feel that vibe is
Yeah.
like interesting, you
No,
know.
absolutely.
What? Tell me some of the things that kind of like led you to say, wait a minute.
You know, just some of the things that he did, and looking back, I'm like, what was he up to? You know, I wasn't ever physically touched, but he would like try to dress us up and take photos.
Okay.
So just, I mean, and it didn't go.
Well, dress you up as
like,
what?
Like I remember this one, and this is crazy. This one particular day, I don't know, like dark makeup around the eyes, and yeah.
And you're in second, third
so
grade.
I'm probably like fourth grade.
Wow.
This is what-
I don't know why my mind went to into costumes.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but I wasn't even thinking
They
that way.
separated right afterwards. I don't know
Okay.
what was going on. And again, it wasn't inappropriate to me where I felt violated.
Yeah.
But something was up.
What about with your other sisters? Was there
I
something?
never saw anything. And my sisters and I, again, weren't close to where, even to this day, I've never asked my younger sister. Even to this day. And I just realize that now. I've never asked her if she was.
That's interesting.
As you got older, getting into elementary, middle school, was the separation with your sister was still persist?
It did because it wasn't promoted within the household. It wasn't, everyone get in the car, let's go on a trip together. It was like, my sister did her thing, my younger sister, I did my thing. I completely started to rebel because my mother, we lived in Vero, and then my mother moved us to Bangor, Maine for 6 months. And then we came back to the same house in Vero. So it was just weird, and so I started rebelling and was doing my own thing. And
did you feel like there wasn't, I think a lot of kids they rebel for lots of various reasons. But what I'm hearing with your story is that it was the lack of affection. So you didn't know how to, or weren't exposed to that. Right.
Right.
But then also not having that stability in your life. Do you think that added to
Absolutely.
that?
I do, because I look back at how I am with my children, and none of them have rebelled. I support them through those stages, and not that I'm saying I'm a perfect parent, of course our children still do what they want to do, but they've had that, the guidance set, they've had it. They've had
like a foundation.
The floor plan set for them. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Well, that's a good way to put it.
Can I touch back on something that you mentioned earlier about your grandfather feeling disappointment towards your mother, and you kind of like viewing those interactions? Now, here's a woman that's a professional. Why was the disappointment? Why did he feel so disappointed towards her?
He never did. I think everybody never did as well as he did. Right? Okay. Financially, professionally. My mother never met his expectations, especially financially. That was a big thing in our family.
In his eyes, particularly.
Oh, absolutely.
Now,
I was to marry someone of the utmost profession. It would be unacceptable for me to marry less. And that's with all of my cousins and myself. It wasn't just me.
Yeah, it was everybody.
I'm the second oldest of the grandchildren, and there's quite a few of us, and that's how it was. And I'm going to be honest with you, some of my cousins did marry, doctors and attorneys, and those marriages lasted very shortly, because that's not what they were.
That they wanted.
They were conditioned to think that they had to do that.
Absolutely.
So,
How were your uncles and your aunts? How are they? How do they figure into this scheme?
That's interesting. So they're amazing, and they are more nurturing and supportive. And and I don't want to give my mom a bad rap. My mother was, like I said, she provided for us, right? But that part was missing. But she has an older sister and a younger sister. Her younger sister, Josie.
That's so funny because you have a younger,
yeah,
older.
And her younger sister, Aunt Josie, is the sweetest thing ever, and we still communicate, and she still sends me letters, and the story about my son, and she was a supporter from day one. Yeah, so it's just, my mom was like the black sheep. She was different, and but again, my mom's older sister married a captain, right, and so he followed. And he became a captain under the guidance of my grandfather.
Okay.
So my grandfather led that because he was a captain, right? The Eastern Airlines. And then my other aunt, she married into a very wealthy businessman. So they did what they were supposed to do. My mom didn't. My mom married.
But you mentioned that
mailman.
that they both divorced further down the line as well, or
they're still married, but all of their children.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Your cousins.
Yeah.
Cousins.
What do they make? What do your two aunts make of the situation with your mother? Have they said anything to you about her and the way that she interacted with you guys?
So I don't know if they know the true story about my father, of course. I don't know if that's ever been discussed because I just found out, I don't know. They know that my mother is like her father, that has that harsher personality and that harder core. And so it's like, we brush it off. you know, when we're all together.
Yeah.
So.
And you all do get, I know this should come later, but you do all come together.
We do. We came together for my, when my grandfather passed. New Smyrna was a big place for us. We always visited New Smyrna as a family. And when he passed, he had arranged for us all to come together as a family.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
And and that was, you know, like I said, recent, and we were able to be around each other. And
That's interesting because that's almost like a sign of affection.
Yeah.
That he wanted to bring everybody together, you know, to have that inclusion. That's interesting. You know, it's like a contradiction.
You're
like,
absolutely
and he's
right.
not even here anymore, but
he's pushing us together.
No,
that's
interesting.
You're absolutely right.
I wonder if, and this is not, you know, like we can touch on this later, but I wonder if he had some sort of like epiphany or, you know,
I don't know because
maybe not.
I'll tell you why.
Never mind.
Well, no, I'll tell you why because you know, as they started to deteriorate, as they got older, of course they were in the nicest facility, the most beautiful facility, but he was still the angriest man toward those workers. I mean, it was known on the floor. Oh Lord, Mr. Simons. So he still, you know, he was honoring. He went out just like he wanted to, but he absolutely did bring us all together, and it was prearranged that we all meet at this resort for, you know, a nice couple days, and
wow.
So it was nice.
So I guess you could look at that in two ways, but we'll go into that on another interview.
No. Let's go on now.
I was just gonna say, like, okay, so I took it to the one extreme, so they're polarized now. My thoughts, because at first I was like, oh well, maybe he sort of reflected on his life and he sort of saw you know, how he behaved with his grandkids, his daughter, and you know what it
right.
But maybe it was, I just want to show my entire family that this is status. Yeah. I brought all of you together. I was trying to be on the good side of that, you know.
Maybe my grandmother planned it.
Or maybe, could be.
Right.
Could be. See, I didn't even think about that. Yeah, like it could have been that too. So
what do you think? Because it's a good point that whether or not he had an epiphany. But to looking at it from another angle is, why do you think that he was so driven?
I guess because of what he went through as a young man and what he experienced, you know. But he was a World War II bomber, and none of us could ever hold, you know, a match to his fire. You know, I mean, I think what he went through, he just expected us to be on his level.
If I can do it, you can do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Besides the backyard conversation, was there any other types of conversations? Because this seems to be one of those relationships in your life that was very formative.
If he could see me now, he'd be blown away, because he had no idea. When I was in my master's program, he you know, he wasn't doing well, so he wouldn't have understood. You know, he wouldn't have understood what we were telling him. But so if he could see me now and the role that I'm playing in education, he would be blown away.
And how do you feel about knowing that?
I did it for myself.
Okay.
So let's
just get that straight.
Get that straight. Okay.
I did it for myself, and I did it for my children. But it does make me proud, you know. But I didn't do it because he took me on the back patio every single day, or every time we visited. But he definitely, you know.
Was he at all in any way, shape, or form some little bit of, not necessarily motivation, but I don't have another word, but that person that was like, you know, like, I know you're saying you didn't do it for him, but did he give you or help give you that drive, so to speak, to want more for yourself?
So as an adult looking back, yes. Okay. At that point, no. Okay. I wanted to not do it because every time I went there, that's all he talked about. Like,
you wanted to rebel.
You know, what about everything else that's going on? You know,
so he didn't ask you about nothing.
Yeah. What if I wanted to open my own business? Yeah. What if I wanted to, you know, there wasn't an option, you know, and if I did, then my mother would have had the wrath of that.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Because that would have been outside of what he wanted.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Okay.
So I don't know.
It's interesting.
I wish he was here to ask him.
I know, right?
I do.
So let's move into, I mean, we've sort of kind of skip back and forth here, but let's go from, we know about your childhood, and now we kind of go from your childhood, we go into your adolescence and a more self-reliant stage in your life where you're starting to sort of look for the things that your interests, the things that you want to do, your aspirations and things like that. Talk to us about that stage.
So I'm gonna jump to high school, and basically in high school I took a law studies class, and so I didn't love school. I was an average student, right? I was only there for
which high school?
Vero Beach High School.
Oh, Vero Beach High School. Okay,
class of '91.
All right.
So I didn't love it. I was only there because I had to do it, right? I wasn't involved in any. I just wanted to go to school, do my 8 hours, and come home. But I took this law studies class, and I was
by choice.
Yes,
Okay.
it was an elective.
Okay. Oh, okay.
And I loved it.
Really?
So that and Cops, right?
The show.
Yeah.
You know,
You know what? To me, it was. I don't know if you saw.
Was it Bad Boys? Bad Boys.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bad Boys.
Okay, I know which one it is.
Yeah. To me, it was Point Break. That's what I wanted. Like Point Break.
Yeah.
I wanted to be Keanu.
Don't get him started.
The surfer?
Oh my God. Here we go.
Yeah.
Oh.
Vaya con Dios.
and I never wanted to be in law enforcement per se, like enforcing the law, but I knew this was my thing. Okay. And so so my girlfriends, they were all graduating high school and going straight to the universities. Well, me, because school wasn't my thing, I didn't test right into a university. So I had to put in my time at Indian River Community College.
Hey, shout out.
Yeah, I went to IRCC too.
IRCC.
So yeah.
Looking back at my transcripts, because I can pull them today, it's hysterical.
I mean,
And the class that I'm teaching now, I took as a student, deviant
Oh, that's
behavior,
hilarious.
my favorite
Oh, wow.
course.
That's funny.
So looking back, it's funny to see those grades. So they were all transferring to Florida State, especially, and I was at Indian River Community College, and then finally I'm like, I'm going to go to Tallahassee too. I'm going to, I don't have my AA yet, but I'm going to transfer, and I went to Tallahassee Community College, and I finished my AA there, and I transferred into Florida State, and that's kind of where my story really, really, really begins. That's where it begins.
let's hold that for a second, because I want to go back.
I'm like ready.
Yeah, I want to go back to something that you said earlier, right? In which that you started to be more rebellious during your teenage years. I mean, we kind of went a little bit further ahead, and I want to kind of touch on that. What was that like? What happened?
So my mom still doesn't know. You really want me to talk about it?
Yes. We want to hear about, because this is part of the journey of becoming self-reliant.
The quest.
The quest.
No, absolutely.
Sorry.
No, I mean, just not listening, not being home, running away, hanging out. There was a house 4 houses down from my house that was the hangout, and it was all older people, and I was the youngest one there, and I was, smoking marijuana and just doing everything that, we did. Bon Jovi playing, you know what I mean? I mean, it's just, right? But I was there every night, and I would run away. If my mom said, come home, I would run away. The police would pick me up, bring me back home. I sat in a holding cell. So yeah.
Why were you running away?
Because she told me to be home, because being stupid,
Okay.
Not because of abuse or neglect
Just
or anything
regular
like
stuff.
that. Yeah, I guess, I don't want to be home at 10,
And you're not
You
home
didn't-
anyway.
you
You're
didn't wanna-
sleeping throughout the day, so
yeah.
why should I care?
You didn't want to follow her rules.
Right.
Yeah.
It's so funny to hear my mom talk about that period, because my mom's like, oh, I cook dinner every night. I'm like, Mom, you didn't cook dinner. What the hell are you talking about?
For who?
I know. You were asleep or at work, I don't know.
Do you say that to her?
Yes. I still to this day, I'm like, what do you mean?
That's hilarious.
My mom had like 4 staple dinners, and I still remember those 4 staple dinners.
And what were they?
So tacos, right? Spaghetti. We used to have beanie weenies. Do you guys remember beanie weenies?
Yes. Oh my
Right?
God.
And then my mom made a really good pot roast or something. But so those are
That's
I don't
hilarious.
Those are the 4
And
staples.
and I have to remind her of that, because I don't know where.
And then she only cooked those farm few.
Yeah.
In between.
And, my mom worked hard, and my mom was a trauma nurse, and worked hard. And, but yeah, we took advantage of her sleeping and working those hours. But,
Yeah.
So, I got a car. I did receive a car for my 16th birthday.
Oh, okay.
And not only was it a car, it was a 1976 Camaro.
Oh my God! What's going on in Vero and the
16-year-old girl
and fast cars? I don't understand this.
So I
boy.
didn't have it long.
Oh,
So I was located in my car at a known drug spot. And so law enforcement, of course, got involved, and I was sitting at Vero Beach Police Department and being questioned about where I was and why I was there. And apparently they had some nice looking young man come to the high school and pretend to be like cool. And he was really an adult.
Undercover.
And I fell for it because he was a nice looking young man.
Yeah.
And so him and I became like best friends. So fast forward, the car was taken away.
Wow. Isn't that 21 Jump Street?
Yes, that is 21 Jump Street.
Like,
true story.
That's an episode of 21 Jump Street.
Was it a Johnny Depp lookalike? Or better?
I don't remember what he looked like. All I know is he had a party and it was like I had a condo.
Oh my God.
Wait a minute. Isn't that entrapment? Isn't that entrapment? That sounds like entrapment.
I don't know.
That sounds like entrapment to me.
So your car was taken away.
It was. I don't remember if law enforcement took it.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I was nothing. Nothing happened with me. I thank God. But it was
How did your mom respond?
I don't even. I think the car was worse. Getting the car taken away. I don't remember her responding.
What about your grandfather?
Never knew.
Oh, he never knew.
Yeah.
Because
there was a lot hidden from my grandparents. A lot.
I was going to say, I don't think it sounds like your mom didn't really share a lot of things with
not
him
at all.
because she was the black sheep and she didn't want to be held to a.
What other things? I mean, what other things do you rebelled? You said there was a lot of things hearing from my grandparents. Like I'm nosy. Sorry.
No. Well, I mean, once I got to Tallahassee, of course, that stuff. But I mean, I just didn't have that. I was sexually active very young, and I just didn't have that. Just didn't know better. So just doing what I wasn't supposed to be doing.
Just like teenager stuff,
Yeah.
like normal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So it's really not terrible stuff.
It wasn't
it's
terrible, except for my car getting taken away because I was at a drug spot.
Yeah.
Besides that, that was crazy.
That's hilarious. That's an episode of Cops right there.
And it was an amazing car. I'm talking like the wide tires and
Really?
it was black. It was
Oh my God.
It was a beautiful car.
Wow. So you were like cool.
I was really cool.
And then you went to a drug spot unknowingly.
I was led there.
I would say that was entrapment. I think we need to try. We need to start a petition.
I think that is entrapment.
Isn't that entrapment, right?
I would agree.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah, because
this is the
he had
expert
a party and she. Of course, she's gonna go.
But he literally was planted in the high school to make because he was good looking, so everyone flocked to him, right?
And young.
Yeah, and he wasn't young; he was an adult.
But he looked like he looked the part.
He absolutely looked the part, and we all came to his like condo. His parents were out of town.
I'm telling you, that's like a 21 Jump Street.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's some BS right there.
Yeah, that's why I don't trust high school kids anymore.
So,
I don't trust anybody. What are you talking about?
So you say that you moved. Okay, so you go to Tallahassee, you go to community college, and then this is where your life really begins. What happened?
It does. So I finished my AA degree and I was accepted to Florida State University, and so I'm a junior. And then got pregnant.
Well, that's a big jump.
It was a very big. I was enjoying college. My grades were still average. I was there to be with my friends, right, and be a Florida State Seminole. Right?
Yeah,
of course.
Represent Florida State.
What is it? Wait a minute. What did it say about FSU? About because I know that UCF that said you can't finish. What was the FSU thing back then? There was a little acronym for FSU. You know what I'm getting at.
We're not going there.
Why? I want to hear it. I want to hear it because everybody always says UCF you can't finish. That's not true.
Is that when they talk about the free shoes university when all the players were getting free shoes and all that?
No, not the free shoes one.
That's when I was there.
There was like something that somebody will remember it eventually. Yeah, but free shoes, right?
That was a big thing. Yeah, they were under a lot of. Yeah, I was there when they were national champions with Bobby Bowden. So.
Yeah. And what's his name? Quarterback, New York Knicks.
Charlie Ward.
Charlie Ward.
Yeah.
Yep. Right.
Derek Brooks, Charlie Ward, all of them.
You don't know.
No,
football.
I was gonna say I don't think I know.
No,
I feel like I know the name Ward.
Is he with the Knicks? He went with the Knicks?
Yeah, Charlie Ward was a point guard for the Knicks for a long time.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was really good too.
Maybe that's where I know it from, the Knicks, but.
Yeah, he was really good.
I'm a Yankees.
Yeah, no, I'm football. I like football. I don't like
I'm
baseball.
baseball. Everybody thinks baseball's boring, but I happen to think it's pretty exciting.
That's important.
There's nothing like a baseball game and a beer.
Ooh,
Anyways, going back. So
stay on track.
Okay.
So
So you get pregnant.
Yeah, I mean, and we were dating. He was a student as well. He was a football player, but had been injured, so he wasn't actively playing football. So I got pregnant. So here I am, a junior. I haven't been in Tallahassee long, right?
Right.
So obviously I was enjoying myself.
Mhm.
Most people are enjoying sororities and all of that. And so I get pregnant, and I have to tell my mom, right? So I came home, and I didn't tell my mom. I told my mom's best friend first. And she's like, "Oh God, your mom's gonna flip out." And so I sat my mom down, and I told her, I said, I'm pregnant, and how far along I was. And the interesting story is, I was being protective. It was it's crazy how it happened. I literally had a nail appointment and a hair appointment that afternoon, and I'm gonna be honest. I had to, you have to go get a new pack of, birth control pills or whatever, and they do a urine test, and I was ready to do it and go. And they brought me in to sit down. I'm like, why am I sitting?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I have a nail appointment. And I was like 3 months pregnant already.
Wow.
So I came home and I told my mom, and my mom's reaction. Not only did I have to tell her that I was pregnant, I had to tell her that I was pregnant by an African American man. The young man I was dating was African American, and that didn't go well. She said some very hurtful words that I had never heard her say before. And the first thing that, she said is, "My father will disown me. He'll disown me. He'll disown you."
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Yeah. So that pregnancy was kept secret. Although I was in Tallahassee and they were in Winter Park, that pregnancy was kept secret for until he was 2 years old.
Wow.
And at this time, my older sister already had my nephew was the first grandchild, and then of course my son came along, and no one knew. And then my sister had her second son, and so they, the family thought that was their second grandchild. And at that point, I wasn't going to hide it for anybody else anymore. I didn't care how much money you had or what you had over me or what you had over my mom, and that may have been selfish of me, but I drove from Tallahassee to Winter Park, and here he is.
Yeah.
Meet my beautiful child.
And how was that response?
So surprisingly, the response went well. They felt sad that I couldn't share it with them. And
Now, these were words from your grandmother or from your grandfather?
From both of them. I remember still to this day them getting pots and pans out of the kitchen for him to play with, right, while we're talking. And they were saddened by the fact that I felt I had to hide it from them. But again, remember, this is what they instilled in us their entire lives. And this is what they instilled in my mother, the financial support that my mother needed throughout these two divorces.
Yeah.
Because she did receive that support from them. So yeah, that's.
May I ask, did they have, because you said that your father's or your son's, I'm getting all these people. Yeah. So your son's father was black. Did they ever express, in any part of your family, did they ever express a sort of discontent for, you want to stay within your own race? You don't do that,
So it was never spoken about, right?
Okay.
Because of course, this college was my first experience. But when I told my mother, her first reaction was, derogatory.
Yeah.
And that was surprising to me because I've never heard her talk like that growing up. We never were exposed to that.
Right.
And thankfully so. But I think she was ashamed, of his father, and said that my son would have troubles all throughout life. Being accepted
because
and
he
being
was a mixed,
biracial.
Yeah, biracial.
That she said all throughout life he'd have trouble adjusting and being accepted, and so.
And in her defense, that may have just been, just to play the devil's advocate, that may have just been what she was brought up,
right?
Understanding, or you know what I mean?
Absolutely brought up, and then like I said, my grandparents were supportive when I was at their doorstep with him, but I don't know, what. It was growing up in their household. Right. I can only imagine.
Now, you went there by yourself?
I did.
Without your mom?
I did. They didn't know. I guess I was done. I was not going to live my life for anybody anymore.
You were just fed up.
I was
just like, I'm not doing that.
My son was beautiful, and he had no reason to be hidden.
And what about the father? Where does he fit in all this part?
So we built a happy little family
Mm-hmm.
up in Tallahassee. He supported me continuing to go to school.
Did he stay in school too?
He did
Or
not. He started
okay.
working for the Department of Juvenile Justice.
Okay.
And he's a great man. He was like 6'3", 300 pounds. He's a big teddy bear.
And you're how big?
Like 5 foot. But he was amazing. We built a family. We got these little town home, and while everyone was out partying, and like I said, sororities and fraternities, we had a family.
Mm-hmm.
And so and I have to tell you, Florida State, this one particular professor, her name's Dr. Bedard, was my mentor and wouldn't let me quit. I literally was in there taking an exam probably 7 days after giving birth.
Wow.
And would not let me give up, would not let me quit. And I graduated with a 1-year-old in the audience. And so,
wow.
And we still stay in contact. I'll see her Monday.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
Awesome.
that's so nice.
We still stay in contact. And it was
That's
her.
awesome.
I said, I was going to be her one day to one of my students. It was her who instilled that in me, that I would never let one of my students ever have anything, stop them from.
Like an obstacle or a
Yeah.
challenge
Yeah.
that you wouldn't be willing to help them
Absolutely.
with, sort of
Absolutely
thing. Yeah.
not. So,
That's amazing.
So yeah. So
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 you
you got sorry.
no, I was gonna say. So you finished school. You said you
did.
graduated. Did you guys? Obviously didn't stay there. What happened?
right.
Next?
So we graduated, and we moved down to the Okeechobee area.
Okay.
I worked at a private prison
Mhm.
as a correctional counselor. I had first went to Indian River County. We actually went to 2 separate homes because I went to Indian River County and worked as a victim advocate there. We had separated for a little bit, and then I went to Okeechobee, and that's where he's from. So he was there, and I worked at a private prison there. And when my son was 5 years old, it was President's Day, 2002. Of course, we have legal holiday. You don't go to school, and you don't go to work. So I came home to Vero, and was at the outlet malls of Vero, and my mother received a phone call, and my mother got white as a ghost, and I'm like, Mom, what's wrong? And she's like, nothing, we'll talk about it when we get home. And so the whole way home, I'm like, oh my goodness, my grandfather passed away. What do I say to someone whose father just passed away, right?
Yeah.
And so the whole way home, I'm thinking in my head, how do I console her? What do I
Yeah.
do? And then and then we get home. Sorry.
It's okay.
So we get home, and my son is outside playing, and it was his father who passed away.
Just
You
gonna
want
make me cry. I need tissue.
you want me to stop? For
No, I'm okay.
No.
So he was 5. He was in kindergarten, and my son's father was 27. And although healthy, he had a massive heart attack that morning. And so here I am in Vero shopping, and they all, his family all thought I was at work, and they were contacting the prison, trying to get a hold of me. And so, although it happened first in the morning, I didn't find out till like 6 o'clock in the evening.
Oh my gosh.
So that's kind of, you just get the strength from within. You just, I don't know what overcame me. I still to this day don't know what overcame like me that night. I had to bring my son in from outside and sit and look at his eyes and, let him know as a 5-year-old what had just happened. Because he was, his dad was everything to him. His dad played football. He was already in football at the age of, 4 and 5.
Yeah.
So his dad was like amazing to him. It came to his football games, and his dad's family is amazing. And so I just turned to him and I looked at him, and I said, your dad was like really big and really strong. And I said, God just needed him to clear the skies and move the clouds out of the way. And that's the story I told him. I don't know what, it came to me instantly. It just came to me. Because, a 5-year-old doesn't understand God and why God takes somebody, and, and my son understood. And he understood that story, and he was really, really upset, but he understood. And all through his childhood, even now, he's 25 years old, that story remains. My son, like I said, played football, had very, very, very important championship games and graduation ceremonies and birthdays, and none of his events were ever like rained out, if that makes sense. The skies always cleared at the last minute, always. Still to this day they do, and it's his dad. I can't explain it to anything else. And if you ask my son today, he will remember me sitting him down and telling that story.
Wow.
He still remembers it, and it's just significant to our lives. And his dad's always been there, and he's very active in our lives. And my husband accepts the fact that this man is loved, and it's part of our lives forever. But even like my son's graduation night, it's storming all day long, and then the sky is cleared.
Clear.
It's just, and sometimes you look up there and like, okay, I see you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's beautiful.
And the story just continues. It just, there's so many more examples where that guiding light has directed us, in the right way, and with my current husband, with my husband now. So yeah.
Wow.
So
I really don't know what to say.
I know it's touching because it's usually towards the end of these interviews we talk about death and the experience of death and how do you feel about death, and it's like when you talk about your son going through that and having that mental strength at such a young age to have that mental capacity to understand, like, okay, I get it. I had to give this person up,
right.
This person that I adore. He's the center of my world. He's everything,
Right.
and I have to give him up because he's this big, strong guy and
right.
he's needed somewhere else kind of thing, and that's like,
he's proud of his dad because his dad has a job.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like to have that capacity at such a young age is really telling of the foundation that you have set up for him. You know what I mean? And the love and the affection that you've given him, and both of you, even when you said you separated and that you were still close, and you know what I mean? Like you adore him still, you love him, and your husband now completely respects that. That's it's powerful.
It's a big part of his life. And it was hard. There was not an easy day. I put myself through the law enforcement academy, and I knew at that time, okay, it's on my shoulders. It's all me now. And I just used him my son to keep pushing forward, and I haven't looked back since.
Something interesting that you mentioned was your mom's reaction. Was completely the opposite thing from what happened previously when you said that you were pregnant. That she was supportive and understanding. What made the transition? Was it your son that made her realize the beautiful thing that came out of her that ignorance at that moment?
I honestly think because I wouldn't have accepted anything less. You either have the both of us or you have none of us. I guess he was my life. Here I am, 20 years old, and he was my life. And you either support me or you don't.
Where do you attribute that inner strength, that feistiness to just tell people it's either me, us, or nothing?
I don't think it was until I was responsible for somebody else. When I became responsible for somebody else, that was it. There's no more, I'm not going to believe in what you believe. I'm not going to allow you to teach me to judge others. I was done. I am now responsible for my own, and I need to build on that. Right.
So now we're in the maturity stage, and we're past the first part of your interview. You talked about the death of your son's father and whatnot. So now you're in your professional stage and whatnot. So start there. That's
okay. So about 2 weeks after he passed, I returned to work at the prison. And the first day back, I was of course face to face with all the offenders who already knew the news, and they were just waiting for me to say something. I was quiet; they were quiet. They had made cards, sympathy cards, and just the sweetest thing. And I know it's bad to say, but it was the sweetest thing. And I broke down, and I just wasn't ready to be in that population. I just wasn't ready to be faced with it. So I made the decision to process for the federal government. But then through the process, I had to sign what 3 states I would like to move to, relocate to, and of course none.
Yeah.
Right? I needed to stay in Florida because that's where my support system was.
Yeah.
So I withdrew my application from that process, and I relocated back to my home, to Vero, to our family home. And I had to stay with my mother for a year. Very hard.
Yeah, tell us about that.
Well, you have a toddler.
Yes.
Well, he wasn't a toddler. He was 5. So he was, but he was rambunctious. I mean, my son loved to be outside, right? He preferred football outside more than cartoons inside.
Yeah.
So when you have him in a house, in a small home, and it's not my home, it's not child-proofed, right? You're just always on edge, like, oh God, don't touch,
Yeah.
So that was hard. And then
How was your mother with him?
I mean, so the funny thing is, still to this day, my mom is not a babysitter, but my mom will give them what they need. Right? My mom will take them on a vacation, the best that they've ever had, but can't babysit for more than 3 hours at a time.
No, she's not that person.
Still, no. It goes back from, when I was young.
Yeah.
It's not her thing. I don't even know if kids were her thing. Now looking back at it, I mean, I love her, but it's just not her thing. So it was hard. It was a rough year, but they relocated. My mother moves a lot. So my mom.
What'd you call your mom earlier?
A nomad.
A nomad, that's right.
Yeah.
She can't sit still.
True story.
Wow,
my mom's in her 80s, about to be in her 80s, and still moving around.
Wow.
So my mom moved up north. My mom loves to be up north. And so the family home, we stayed in the family home.
You and your son did?
My son and I, right.
Nice.
And I was able, with my son's death benefits from his father, we were able to... I was able to have like a nanny, have a support system to help me get through that stage. And then I worked for DCF for about 8 years, and as an investigator, as a supervisor. That was hard because here I'm a single mom, but I missed a lot of events because,
24/7.
If you get a call at 5:00, you're not going to the football game at 5:30. Yeah. So that was hard, and he remembers that. He still remembers me working so hard during that time, and he doesn't hold it against me. Like hearing, that's who you need to get here. Hearing his story is amazing because he remembers just everything, the little details that I don't.
Wow. It's his perspective.
Yeah, it's so interesting.
And it's funny because young kids learn more by watching than listening to their parents talk.
Absolutely.
So the actions and to understand that he sees that you were working hard.
Right.
It's a good thing.
And instilled good values in him.
Yeah.
He expresses today. So, unfortunately, working for the Department of Children and Families, the caseloads are huge. There's only so much time in the day, and there's, the stress to meet the standards is one thing. Then I had a supervisor. We had a very toxic leadership within the department. I don't know if it was internal deadlines or district deadlines or what it was, but there was just a constant demand of numbers. Yes, of course, we had to see with our victims within 3 hours or 24 hours. Of course, there was Florida statute, and that's. But then there was the outside of that. Normally when you have a case that can be open for 60 days, get it done within 30, and of course ensure child safety. But myself, the personality that I have is I would like to provide as many services as I can, and I'd like as much time as I need to make sure the services get placed in the home. So it just became a really toxic environment. Every time the phone would ring from, leadership, you'd get ill, you'd get sick to your stomach. It started to take a physical toll on you, and you have to realize, okay, what do I do? So I did speak to the EAP, employee assistance, and I'd never in my life done that before. It seems like a weakness, right?
Yeah.
That's the stigma behind it. So I did do that and told the story, and they said, it will only get better if you leave. So
That's crazy.
it is. So I had to leave, and that individual stayed for many, many, many years after me.
Wow.
Wow.
So I'm working on a dissertation myself on
Yeah.
toxic leadership. So we
Yeah.
need to connect after
Okay.
this.
No names though, right?
No names.
No names keep required.
No names.
Okay.
Pseudonyms.
How did that make you feel? Because there's a lot of people out there that are working under these conditions, and maybe they don't have the education nor
Yeah.
the means to segue into something else,
Right.
and then they're stuck.
You're never stuck. You have to use your foundation to build.
Okay.
You're never ever stuck.
Good.
I mean, it might get hard.
Uh-huh.
You know, like I was a waitress at Bob Evans for like 6 months. You know, I wasn't stuck. I just was at a standstill while things were building themselves. You're never stuck. You just have to. If you're stuck, you know, there's so many resources out there. It's you,
Good.
right? You need to move forward. So I left the department and continued on my career with, you know, in the child protection field as a forensic interviewer. But I met my husband in that time period, and very early on had our daughter.
Well, wait.
Yep.
We got time.
Fast forward.
But no. Slow down. You met your husband.
Yep.
How did that happen?
How'd we meet?
Yeah. How did you meet?
What's your love story?
What's the love story there?
So our love story is unique and only shared with a select few.
Yeah.
How about that?
Okay. No,
right.
just in terms.
It's unique.
Just in terms of like you.
It is a true love story.
Okay.
There was a promise made, and years later, that promise was upheld. It's a true urban love story.
Okay.
I'm a woman of my word,
Mm-hmm.
if you say it that way. And you know, one day I'd like to tell that story, you know, in a book. But
Well, you said something about the eyes. It was
yeah.
just the
Oh
eyes.
yeah. No,
I think
okay.
that's what he was
Yeah.
alluding
Oh,
to.
okay.
I would, because you just
So-
You don't have to tell us
You
the
don't have to
private
tell them
stuff.
anything else.
So
You
my
just said-
husband, yeah.
You said there was something about a gas station and gas.
So my
and-
husband has absolutely beautiful eyes.
So he captivated you with his
yeah.
eyes.
They're like cat eyes.
Really?
Right? They're like yellow and
Really?
hazel and green, and they just the eyes are
Those are nice.
Yeah.
He's yeah, beautiful man. So
Yeah.
that got me.
Did you spill gas everywhere when you went?
Yeah, I don't even remember.
I didn't even remember putting gas.
I don't even remember. But he's
She probably didn't pay for the gas or anything.
Yeah.
No, she just left. You know.
It was it's a true love story. It really was.
Good.
And it's I love to to tell it because it's unique. It's a unique. You would be surprised.
Good.
Maybe someday in the future we'll get
Yeah.
that.
No, I just wanted to find out
We
about.
wanted to know about
Yeah.
the eyes.
No, yeah, and whether or not she'd actually fill the gas tank
Yeah.
or
Okay.
not. You
Yeah,
know?
and my kids have these beautiful eyes.
Do they?
Oh, they absolutely do. Yeah,
Really?
they do. They
Wow.
do.
Good.
So it's neat.
So you had a shortly after you guys met,
We did.
you had a daughter. So
We
you-
did.
Okay.
Shortly after.
You didn't waste no time.
We did.
It's like I need to duplicate those eyes.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
My daughter is fierce. My daughter has a very fierce personality.
Well, if she takes after you.
Very strong, beautiful young lady. Very strong, very talented. And then I turned 40 and I had my youngest.
Welcome
So,
to the 40s.
Yeah, and he is
What'd you say? You said earlier that now you're back in the
school pickup line. Yeah.
And there's actually somebody else that is a mutual friend of ours, and she was talking about how much she hates.
Yeah. Oh, that car pickup line is serious.
It is.
You know, parents fall asleep and it gets ugly.
Oh, it
I gotta
does.
tell
It
you,
does
when
get
I
ugly.
come home some days, I turn down a specific street, and there's a school there. And the line is going from the school
Oh, yeah.
all the way onto a major
Oh, yeah.
road. And I'm like, I can't even, where am I going to
yeah.
go?
True story.
That's bad.
That's how it is in Vero.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just the funniest thing ever, you know, because here I am again.
yeah.
You know?
And you're like, people fall asleep on the line. It's hilarious.
It gets ugly.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
it's crazy.
And I'm sure people probably get impatient. Like, we're totally off
Yeah.
subject, but I mean, I can imagine.
I just find it comical that I'm there again. You know, I really do. But my son absolutely completes our family. He is the smartest, gifted little man. So sensitive.
Awesome.
He's just not my child, right? I mean, he's just so sweet.
He balances you all out.
He's so sweet.
Yeah.
And so when I was 40 and I was like, okay, here we go, keep pushing forward. And I started my master's program with Florida State. And I completed that. And once I completed my master's program, I kept that promise that I was going to be that professor who supported me when I had my son. And I became that professor. And I stand by like my philosophy of teaching and my students, I love to hear, their reviews, what they have to say. And so then
what would you consider to be your philosophy of teaching?
Absolutely, that every student be allowed an opportunity to reach their fullest potential, no matter single parent, no matter a victim of abuse, finances, that we provide that opportunity. Who are we to say this is due at 4:00 in the morning, no later, when you have a baby at home who's not sleeping? Who am I to say that? If someone would have said that to me, I wouldn't be here today.
Yeah.
Because I literally had that baby crying. My son, when he was a newborn, his days were nights, his nights were days, know, and it was, I had books on my, lap with him.
Right.
Yeah. So I want to provide that opportunity. I want to motivate you to reach your fullest potential. And I want you to remember me.
Yeah.
When you're an adult, I want you to say, that professor pushed me to be here, because that's my story. So yeah.
So you became an instructor or a professor, and so you finished your master's degree. So you finished your master's degree and then you started teaching, or were you teaching?
You had to have your master's
to teach. Right. So you started teaching, and you're teaching strictly criminal justice. Okay. And where are you? Like, are you in school now?
So I am. So, if you would have seen me in high school, you would have never thought that I'd still be in school, right? Never, right?
Yeah.
So I am.
But
I can't believe
isn't
that,
there a
though.
saying that says education is wasted on the youth?
Yes.
Then there's a saying
there
that
is a
says
saying
that.
says that.
I don't know.
But anyways, go ahead. I don't know.
Yeah, I never would have thought I'd be here. Like I knew I wanted to be that professor, right? Like now I am in my doctorate program. I'm a doctoral candidate, which means I am I'm writing my research at this point.
You're all but dissertation now.
I am all the courses completed.
Now, let me ask you, just to rewind a little bit.
Yeah.
What propelled you to make that decision? Because that's a huge decision. I remember making that decision to go back to school very, very vividly, with Omar, and making that, like, it was scary.
I'm going to tell you. So my son, my oldest son, he has been, when I was in my master's program and he was in school, right? And we would have GPA competitions, and for the record, I always won. But he is, I don't know, at first an internal motivation. Like, I knew I just needed to take it like further, but he was like, Mom, you can do this. You've come. I remember when, and we had $4 and like 75 cents, and it was enough to get me a kid's meal at Wendy's. Like, kids meal at Wendy's, the 4-piece nugget was literally like $4.75.
Wow.
And that's all I had. He remembers that. He's like, you can do this. And I just did it. I just never have looked back. So
what did you think that going on for your doctorate would be sort of like an opening for you to do more? Because some people are like, I got a master's degree, I'm done. I don't need. There are successful individuals with their master's degree. So what was that drive? That, I think that's what I'm looking for. What was that drive that said, I'm going to go on for my doctorate? Because committing to a doctoral program is when I always, we work in academia, right? And so we are surrounded by individuals who have a higher level of terminal degrees, right? So you think, oh, everybody's got a doctorate.
Right.
But then when you really do the numbers, there's very few people that have a doctoral degree, and very few women, for that matter, that have that degree.
Right.
So there's sort of an empowering piece to that. But what was that what was that drive, that motivator?
So back to my mentor, her name was, it wasn't Dr. Bedard. When I had her as a professor, it was, Miss Bedard. She received her doctorate while I was a student of hers. And, I guess once you're in the field and you become passionate about a certain research topic, you want to fulfill that need. That's existing need. So my topic is on this, and there is a need for this topic, and there's the strength from within. I knew, like, I feel like there's, and it wasn't for a career, because I'm happy. Right. Yeah. I'm a professor. I have the dream job. I'm a professor, on a college level with students that are just like me when I was there. So it's just, there was research that's needed in a field that's lacking.
Do you mind telling us what that is, or is it something that is?
No, of course. So my dissertation is on correctional officer training. It's through the eyes of an actively employed correctional officer, and it compares the Department of Corrections training to a regional training center. It's two different types of. And so I want to see in the eyes of the actively employed officer how their different trainings impacted them with use of force, injury, stress, that type of thing. And so, and correctional officers, they don't realize this, but they truly are the deciding factor with offenders. For someone, for example, like if you're serving, let's say 20 years, sometimes you have that same correctional officer for those 20 years. That correctional officer has a tremendous impact on that individual's life, right?
And so their training matters in terms of how they,
in regards to recidivism, in regards to inmate behavior, right? Yeah. If you treat them in a firm yet fair manner, which we are all taught to do, there are less incidents of violence and that type of thing, but that's not what's always going on within our prison system. So
can I touch on something about our prison system from a person that kind of like works in it? There's a lot of talk the last few years about reform and the takeover of prisons, and that weird relationship between private business, and public policy,
right?
In regards to how jails and prisons are operated. What is the reality in that convoluted conversation that keeps happening?
I mean, the reality, there's no funding. There's no funding to build rehabilitative programs within a prison. So right now we're just housing.
Okay.
And so when you house an offender for years on end with providing no skills, they're going to be your neighbor. They're going to be our coworkers. So what justice?
What are they going back to?
Right.
Which goes back to that recidivism, right?
Absolutely. So I mean, the reality, there's no funding. We're housing offenders, and there needs to be more focus on rehabilitation, on mental health. Our population of offenders with mental health diagnosis is extreme, and many of them are not on the meds that they need, not receiving the services that they require.
So most people think that our prison population. And I think it's not really a reality,
right.
But most people have to believe that most of the prisoner population are for violent crimes.
No,
and that's not the case.
Right.
And so when people listen to the idea of rehabilitation, they think, no, they just need to do their punishment.
Right.
What would you say to that? Again, these are all convoluted arguments that the reality is somewhere muddled in there.
Right. So let's talk. I'm gonna focus on mental health. Okay, the offender who's suffering from mental health. So you have an offender. Let's say he's not even an offender yet. You have a citizen who is suffering from mental health. Maybe he was in a traumatic event and has PTSD. Doesn't know where to get services from. Okay, so he's suffering. So he's unable to work. So he loses his job. He loses his job, so he loses his home. When he loses his home, he starts committing crimes for survival. And these crimes for survival are, burglary, that type of thing. He goes into the jail, our county jail system, and then he's released. And then he's trying to survive again. He's still homeless.
Yeah.
Still in need of services, mental health services, doesn't know where to go. And so our population is full of inmates who have committed crimes of survival. And unfortunately, it's just a continuing circle. Now, of course, we do have mental health courts, and the mental health courts are a specialty court that they recognize those offenders. They try to recognize those offenders and provide those services, so the doesn't continue to revolve. But so unfortunately, those crimes of struggling is what a lot of our offenders are.
What can you give us like a general idea? What are percentages are really, really hardened criminals in terms of violence versus everybody else?
So I will say that our population is between 18 to 28, okay? And those are drug offenders. And they're a lot of times they're first-time, low-level drug offenders. But because Florida has minimum mandatory sentencing, these drug offenders are getting significant sentences. So that's the majority of our prison population. I mean, yes, of course, you do have those violent crimes, but those aren't the
they're small
That's not
population,
right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
yeah.
So yeah.
And so the 18 to 20, that age group who are in prisons for drug offenses for mandatory. Where does the, and again, I'm doing it for the audience. I know what are the mandatory sentences?
So it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, when did that all come about? Because it's pretty interesting stuff.
So it came. So in the 80s, of course, under Ronald Reagan, we became more strict on crimes. This is when 3 Strikes You're Out came out. Just Say No to Drugs campaign came out, and so it started then. And the unfortunate thing about minimum mandatory sentencing is judges have no discretion. So if let's say.
So judges have no power.
They have to follow
these guidelines.
Right.
Okay.
And even if they have a young, and I've talked to many judges, even if they have a young man standing in front of them who has, active in this community, active in his school, but he was in possession of a certain amount of oxycodone, he could be facing up to. And it depends on the grams that they're possessing. So if it's this, 3 years. If it's this, 7 years. If it's this, 14 years. I will tell you that marijuana has recently been revisited, and I believe it's like 25 pounds now for 3 years. But prior to this, it was a lot less.
A lot less.
Yeah. So fentanyl, mandatory minimum, but of course, no disagreement, no argument there. But even the smallest amount is 3 to 7 years.
3 to 7 years. Wow.
Yeah. And this can be a person who, again, suffering from mental health, who was self-treating.
Or their medications ran out.
Right. Or absolutely.
And they became addicted from
absolutely. And
from prescribed medication.
And it's a real story.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, when presented with it, they have no discretion. The judges have no discretion.
So they have really no authority to say, no, this is not correct.
Right.
So then how does reform take place?
So reform is going to take place with, going against these minimum mandatory sentencing. The criminal justice system as a whole needs to be reformed. And we could talk.
Yeah, I was going to say you could have a whole episode just on that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No. But this is good to understand because again, you see the her personal story in the feistiness to rebel.
Yeah.
And
we can start with, on the street with community policing. Community policing, of course, has an impact on arrest rates. And, we can start from,
getting to know your
the entire system needs to be reformed from the very, very beginning.
Yeah. And I asked that because, again, you're bringing that approach as a teacher for the people who are going to be going into that system and working within those bounds for them to be able to
and I think that's a great perspective to have, because I think what happens is in some weird ways, we don't teach our students that our future law enforcement that aspect.
Right. We don't.
And that needs to be taught.
Absolutely.
So when you're talking about an individual, because there's at least at Indian River State College, we have 2 ways that you become a law enforcement officer, right? You just go into the academy, you pass your testing and whatnot, but then you go into the class and you learn to become a law enforcement officer. And is that being taught in those classes?
So surprisingly so, the curriculum, of course, is already developed. And
and it's Florida statute or Florida Department of Law Enforcement, right? So we have to go by that.
And so the curriculum is already there. But when you talk about diversity and special populations, you would think that the block time would be more on that. mental health.
Right.
Mental health deserves. Right.
Yeah.
It could be weeks. You know,
Yeah.
I could teach an entire subject on mental health. So yeah.
So you would agree that that's something that is sort of lacking,
because they're not prepared for that.
Yeah.
When someone is suffering a mental health crisis, to an officer, it may seem aggressive, and and not always is aggressive. They're in crisis.
Yeah.
And we have to respond to that crisis. And so we definitely need more training on that.
And I do think that one of the things that I have seen working in public service is that, we might be getting off the topic a little bit, but it's coupled with what you do, is that at least at the college here, Indian River State College, that we've had a lot of like seminars and conferences and things that have exposed what is it how to recognize somebody who has autism and autism aware. And I think that has been a really proactive approach from the college to do those types of things. So having more of that, and the agencies, our local agencies, have been really a part of that, which has been a positive, it's a benefit, because not only are law enforcement individuals involved in that, but so are other public servants and people that are involved in that community.
I mean, we have the opportunity to instill new values in our law enforcement officers, our up and coming law enforcement officers, and I feel honored to have a part of that. And when you explain that to them, in my intro to criminal justice class, I'll say, okay, so you have a zone that you're assigned to. Do you ride through your zone with your windows up or down? Like, up. They all say up. And I'm like, why? Safety. What's a window going to do for you?
Right.
It's not bulletproof glass, my friend.
It's not the bad movie.
Right? Exactly. I said, you want it down. You want to hear your community. You need to hear, what's going on. And just to see them just welcome that. I'm honored to be able to talk to them about special populations and the elderly and the mental health and veterans. It's significant, and I wish there was more time. In the FDLA curriculum.
One subject that I want to we talked about your profession, and we're going to get back some more into that as well. Your son. Your firstborn. I kind of want to go back and touch into that, because he's a young man now, right? College graduate. Can you tell us a little bit about his progression? Kind of you being right along, he's being with you throughout this journey, and he's being able to see those type of things, and I want to hear some more. I want to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah. So he's amazing. He's God love him. He's it's not fair what's happened to him, right? Losing his father, and this is just not fair. And he played football, through the age of 4 all the way through college, and then decided to transfer, to a large university and stop playing football abruptly. He stopped playing football. And when you end something that you've done all your life abruptly, you lose you lose your brotherhood. You lose so much, and
identity.
Yeah, you're right. Absolutely, your identity. This was his life. This was my life. And he had a very hard time with that transition, a very hard time. But then, he kept pushing forward, and so he's an adult now. He does. He's so funny. So he started his schooling in criminal justice to follow my footsteps. And then one day I received a phone call. Mom, this isn't for me. I'm changing my. And I'm like, listen, as long as you're happy, and that's all I ask. And so he went from criminal justice to like music production. He loves to produce and music.
Oh, maybe that'll be our. No, I'm just kidding.
He really he loves it. But he does. He works in the medical marijuana field, and he loves it. And I was like, oh my goodness, really working with marijuana? He's like, Mom, no, it's not like that. These people have stories. They are hurting. Yes, of course, you get these guys who whatever. But there are truly people who are dying and that are hurting and that are in pain. And my son is so philosophical, and he loves the stories. And he's passionate about what he does. He truly is. But prior, I have to go back a little bit though, and talk about my husband if I can.
Yeah.
So my son, of course, lives in Orlando, and I talked earlier about his father and how his father has literally been that guardian angel.
Guardian angel. Yeah.
So my son lives in Orlando, and a couple of years ago, maybe it's 3 years. No, is it 3 years this November?
Probably, yeah.
Is that?
Mm-hmm. It's hard to believe, actually.
My goodness.
Yeah.
So 3 years this November, literally days before Thanksgiving, my son was home, of course, for Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm.
And my son was a lifeguard, right? And so he was certified in all those lifeguard skills, CPR and all that good stuff. And so he was at the house, and it was like 3 o'clock in the morning, and I hear my husband calling out for me, like, babe. And it took me a minute to wake up, and I'm like, what's going on? He's like, I'm not feeling well, and I couldn't find him. The house was dark, and it was the middle of the night. And I went into our restroom. It was this large restroom, everything combined, and he was unconscious on the floor.
Your husband was?
My husband was. Completely unconscious. And I, of course, am panicked. I'm freaking out, but my son was there. And, I go and I wake him up, and I'm like, he's, help him, do something. And I know what to do, but it's, when it's your
what is your loved one? It's a different story.
And it's my husband, and I've been through this before. Okay. So here I'm about to lose him, right? I've been through this. And so I am just not doing well. My son, saved his life. Like, why was he home that night? You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't, it's like, I don't know. It's just, again, he didn't live there. It happened that night that he was home. And I just feel like, again, like his father, while his father can't protect us from everything, what he has challenged us with has allowed us to build upon that, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So my husband, I was on the phone with, paramedics, and they came in. The fire department, oh my goodness. They got there within seconds. They came in so quietly. They didn't wake up my younger two children, and they had him out of there within seconds. And my son, and of course, kept him alive for them. And my husband went into heart failure.
Wow.
So here he is at 43 years old, heart failure. And I don't know if you know what an EF is. An EF is how your heart, you're pumping.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And normal, I want to say like 70 something. I don't know. Like it's up there. My husband, his EF was 20, like 25.
Oh, wow.
So his heart walls had thickened to where his heart wasn't pumping. And he was fine. He was fine the day before. He was fine the months before.
No signs at all.
Nothing. But my son was there. Had my son not had been there, I would have lost my husband.
That's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know. It just killed me because, I'm like, I cannot do this again. I cannot.
It's almost as if, and this is very existential, and I'm not an existentialist at all, but it's almost as if your son's father, being the guardian angel, by what you're telling us, was there.
He was.
Like, it's almost like he is happy that you have moved on. Your son is successful. You're doing your thing. You've remarried to this really great guy who takes care of you, has accepted you.
And he wasn't ready to leave me alone.
That's
again.
what I'm saying. Yeah. And it's just very
absolutely.
Existential, like weird to talk about it, but not weird.
No,
it's a beautiful story.
He wasn't ready to leave me alone. He knew the hurt that had been
That's what I'm saying.
Before,
it's like he knew.
And I wasn't ready.
And he's like, this guy is... This is your guy here. You need to. You know what I mean?
I wasn't ready.
Yeah.
I don't want to say I got weak, and I got I was spoiled in my life. Maybe like a reminder to stop taking things for. And I wasn't taking things for granted, but a reminder just to be grateful for what you have.
What you have,
And he didn't take him. I didn't lose him, and
that your son has the wherewithal to sort of be like, I'm gonna save this man. I'm gonna do what I got to do.
He jumped right in.
That's amazing.
I mean, he jumped right in. And so my husband was in the hospital for, a week, and we missed Thanksgiving. My husband and I had Thanksgiving in the hospital together. But when he got home, I did the whole Thanksgiving dinner, the decorations on the table, and this is our new normal.
Yeah.
He is on meds, and he does have arrhythmias that bring him back into the hospital, and it's my new normal, and I'm okay with that. I'm prepared, and every day I make decisions, and I'm prepared. I'm okay, and it's okay. So if it happens, I'm okay.
Let's knock on wood.
No, absolutely.
Yeah. Literally.
That nothing happens.
Yeah. I think
I can only ask my guardian to protect me for so
protect-
long.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you know what, too? And again, this is very existential, and I'm
Yeah.
not in any way, shape, or form saying, whatever,
Yeah.
but there's this weird thing that I take away from this is that, I'm not a religious person.
Yeah.
But I definitely believe in an energy that we
Absolutely.
all have. And I think that there comes a point where you don't reach that level of,
Right.
actualization or anything like that. 'Cause it doesn't happen, but that you continue to evolve, and you become stronger,
Yeah.
and you start to accept things, and you understand. And so it takes you to this different level. It's like this weird, I don't even know how to explain it, but it's almost like
No.
that energy knows.
Yeah.
No,
I absolutely agree with you.
Even though you never want that to happen.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
And we had to change a lot of things.
Yeah.
We had to downsize our home because I could have I could have lost him. I had to downsize our home. I had to be prepared in the event to be
Yeah, you had to start
alone
thinking
again,
about
you
this.
know?
Yeah.
I'm just grateful for every day. It just reminds you. So yeah, he knew I wasn't ready to be alone again, and it was him. And you and I have talked about this. I'm not extremely religious, but I do know there's a higher power, and that power is this young man.
Yeah.
And I'm very grateful to have him.
It's funny because we usually ask that question in our interviews, what is your, how do you feel about death and the it's going to happen, you know what I mean, to all of us. And, you sort of answer that in
Well, I'm scared.
Of course.
I'm scared because my son, and my children are equal to me, of course, right? But my oldest has been through so much that I don't want to leave him, you know, and just recently in March, my son was a victim of a violent armed robbery, and here I am, and I teach mental health, and how to. There's a stigma, but we got to get around that stigma. You need to get help, and he didn't tell me. He didn't let me know until like 4 days after the event, because his mom would have came and packed him up and moved him home, right? and I would have. So he didn't tell me, but he was also, now I know that he was in his darkest moment, and getting mental health treatment is hard. It's expensive. There's waiting lists, and to navigate through that is not an easy task. And I literally spent, over a week trying to find the perfect therapist that specializes in PTSD. He has been since diagnosed. And then of course the treatment has been, it's even more extensive. But he said to me the other day, he's like, when does it stop? When do I get like a real shot, and and I'm like, I don't, all I could say is, it's coming. All these things are happening because it's making you stronger. If your dad helped you through, now your dad kept you alive that night because this man had a gun to his head and wanted keys. This happened outside of his work, and he wanted keys at dispensary. Millions of dollars of inventory are in there.
Inventory, yeah.
And he said to him, are these the keys to inside? And he's like, I can get you the keys. These are keys to the door, but you're not going to get, I don't have keys to inventory, And, my son had to throw everything on the ground. And he's like, Mom, when he went to pick up everything off the ground, I wanted to kick him. I know, I want to kick, I wanted to kick him, and I know 50% of robberies with a firearm end in a death, either of the victim or of the, offender. And I'm thankful, he didn't, and because the story could be different today. But he's like, Mom, when does it stop? I'm like, you were protected that night. Your angel was again there for you. And if he solves every problem, you have nothing to build upon. And I know it's hard for you to see this, but it's building you. It's allowing you as an adult, when I'm not here, to still persevere through all of these things, and I know it hurts, and it hurts me because, every time my phone rings, I'm scared to death, who could be calling me? I'm scared of the police knocking on my door and telling me that, he did succumb to his mental health. So it's tough.
Let me ask, are there any issues with him? I mean, he's a football player for some time.
Yeah.
Is there something in there with that kind of, that worries you too? I mean, he spent a long time.
Absolutely.
CTE is what I believe it's called.
No,
right?
I know exactly where you're going. So my son, of course, did suffer many concussions. Absolutely, that's a concern. And as a matter of fact, and we have had this discussion, him and I, that in the event that he does, pass before myself, that I would donate to the research of CTE, because this PTSD is profound. But then when you couple that with head injury, from years and years on end, absolutely, the PTSD has made him more aggressive, and not to where he's violent towards anyone that he cares for, but he's more agitated more easily. And this is a very laid back young man, and he's quicker to anger, and it's
interesting that you say that, because how everything connects, because what if he comes across a police officer that never had that training, so him being biracial, having all those dots.
So his therapist is amazing. Absolutely amazing. And one evening we were worried for him, and we both agreed, I can't do a welfare check on him. I'm not going to send the police to his home, because what happens when the police do knock on his door? Here he's 6'3". He's aggravated. He's agitated. He's aggressive. But he's hurting. He's truly suffering. Truly suffering, and he'll never be the same. And I didn't. I had to get him on the phone. I think I called someone to go over there, and like a friend, a close friend of his, and to go over there, and I was there the very next morning. But you're absolutely right. I knowing what I know, and the lack of knowledge with that special population, I was not going to call a welfare check-in. Now, had it been absolute, if he had stated to me a plan, and,
of course,
absolutely, I would have, but not as a welfare check, just because he wasn't answering.
He was there.
I would have never. But no, CTE and head injuries and concussions, absolutely are.
They compound that.
Absolutely are. Absolutely, alone.
Right.
Alone. Alone.
And now, when you're dealing with
a
diagnosed mental health,
with PTSD.
Wow. But he's an amazing young man. He has amazing goals. He's grounded, and he'll do good things.
For sure.
He'll do better. He'll be fine.
I'm sure he would. I mean, I think that he's overcome a lot.
To go through something like that,
but it has to stop.
Traumatic.
And I'm on his side. Like he that's when he asked me that, Mom, when does it stop? When will that? Why me? And you don't have that answer. Like, I don't know why you, but all I can say is, it's this. It makes you. What I went through made me stronger, and that's why you look up to me, because of my strength. Like, he'll tell you I'm the strongest person you ever met. But what I went through made me this, and what he's gone through is going to make him the most amazing man, father, husband.
So definitely.
We talked a lot about things in life, you know. And like we spoke before about what the purpose of this podcast is. It's really to find commonalities in a person's life. And so I want to ask you just a few questions based on what you've learned in certain periods that you are able to carry on to this day. You know, you mentioned
But does she know about the skiar?
Should I know? Oh, you want me to do that?
Yeah,
okay.
that's how we.
Uh-oh.
He's trying to break out of what we normally do.
Uh-oh.
Throwing me off.
I'm off today. I'm just kind of like just going with it.
I gotta tell you, he has taken me out of my moment, and I've been like, huh? Well, wait, I want to like, can we stop? Time out. He's thrown me off.
This is
the part where we go through the skiar reflection, and this is something that Omar has developed. So I like it when he talks about it because this is his baby.
So the word skiar is a Latin word that stands for known, or what has become known to us, right? And I like I was doing an acronym one day, and you know, you talk about separation or solitude, you know, spending time by yourself in those dark moments, you know, when you're by yourself, the confronting of situations, the integrating those situations into your life, having an awareness of what this means to you, and then continuing your return to continue to move on. So I wanted to ask a couple of questions, and when you reflect into the different stages on your life, like your early stages, understanding reflecting on your dad, your biological dad,
Right.
Reflecting on your grandfather, and that idea of the male figure in the person's life. What is the biggest takeaway up to this point that you have gotten out of that interactions with those two individuals in particular?
So it was life lessons. I will to always instill just that foundation in your own children. Never ever have them afraid. Never have them afraid to approach you with anything. Never set expectations that they're not their own. You know, just be that support system, be that motivation. I am, you know, I guess my kids have been taught not to judge others, and it's just, you know, I don't know how to. I guess I won't let what happened to me happen to them ever. And I hope moving forward that they have learned the same, and they will continue their lives with the same thing. They will be the same person and provide the same opportunities that I provided to them. You know, if that makes sense.
What is... sorry.
Yeah, no, I was going to say it makes total sense because I mean, I know that most mothers will say, I just want, like, it's almost like you're saying, I want them to have a better life, a better, you know what I mean?
I don't want my children afraid to tell me anything.
Right. That you want to be a support system. You want to be that person to them that they confide in.
And I want them to be proud of what they have, you know?
And that has to come with not having that, disposition of judgment and having the expectations that you're talking about and whatever. So that's,
And my kids, I mean, they'll tell you that, you know, they're very open with me, you know, of course they have their
thing,
their kid secrets. And I get that.
Kid secrets.
You know, but they know, you know, if you're, you know, in high school, you know, and if you're somewhere at 3:00 in the morning and you are unsafe, no questions asked, you call and we will get you. You know, and just, you know, and I know a lot of parents say that, but we don't do it. You know, and I'm just not going. I won't. I had to hide my son for 2 years. Like I literally hid my son. I would never, ever, ever ask that of my children. And that's just, you know, building the foundation of what's to come.
And that's really cool because it kind of, you know, you talked about hiding your son because you that leads into the confronting portion of the skiar because that was a situation where you had to confront, you know, your grandfather and just expose this big secret, you know. So tell us about that.
The lessons that you learned, like the importance of confronting situations.
Stand up for yourself. You know, I am not one to be taken advantage of. And it wasn't until I had someone where I was responsible for that, that it was so significant, you know, but I don't want people to think that just because they do not have someone that they are, because they don't have someone that they're responsible for to stand up.
Yeah.
Stand up for yourself.
Yeah.
We talked earlier about getting stuck. You're never stuck.
Yeah. What about your mentor? You're modeling a lot of your professional career on the kindness that she showed. What can you say something to that? Because that's always a powerful thing, because there are people that come into our lives in certain situations that are pivotal, and they either make us go one way,
right,
or they make us go another way. So can you expound just a little bit, tell us a little bit about the lessons learned from that, and how will you continue to live your life based on that simple act of kindness?
Right. Just the support. This professor went out of her way to make sure that we were successful. You can stand in front of a class and you can lecture, right? But this professor took us into the prison system on her own time at night. She had 2 small kids at home. Just the outpouring of support, and she wanted to be there. It wasn't for a paycheck. This was her passion. And she wrote, I remember, I still have this letter of reference from 1998. She wrote a letter of reference for me that said, Lisa, it symbolizes, she's weighing academics and parenthood, and she is, just amazing. And when to hear her say that about me, when I thought that about her, was just, and when we connected again, we've stayed in contact. We connected again recently, and I said, you're why I'm here. And I said, do you know that? She's like, oh, no, Lisa. I'm like, no, you are truly like why I'm here. Like you were from the very beginning of my story. If it wouldn't have been for her support and her role at Florida State, I wouldn't have continued school. Like, how could I have? Who would have allowed me to bring my newborn to class to take I wouldn't be here. God knows what would have happened with that.
Good. One existential question before we'll go into your future and what do you have planned? What are you working on?
She got big plans.
I know. I want to hear those. What are your thoughts on? You experience so much, and and people experience so many things, and there are so many nuances in the way that life is developed. What are your thoughts of the origin and the meaning of life?
I'm probably the wrong person to ask, because I feel like I'm being tested, right?
No test.
No. I feel like, personally, the meaning of life has been, the meaning of life is so valuable. It's been taken from me before. It's been taken it almost was taken again. It's just, I'm so grateful. I get upset because so many people take it for granted, and I'm just, in the moment, and it's until you've lost it, I still have that outfit I wore to his funeral. Until you've been there. So it's I don't know. It's hard. I feel like I'm the wrong person to ask, because it's I've almost lost it, a couple of times, and I have lost it. So I just feel like the meaning of life is just to continue, just take that hurt and keep pushing forward and building, and that's what I did right. Thank goodness. I don't know. I can't even take credit. Like, I don't know where the strength came from to keep pushing forward. But I'm glad I had it.
Nope, go ahead.
It's going to make me cry. I've never cried in an interview. One thing that I would say, just to expound on that, is that when I listen to what you just said just now and your story, I feel like there's this like a lot of people really do take life for granted.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Some people just think it's, you know, completely meaningless and whatnot, and don't see the beauty in the little nuances and the little and the how, because life can be
And that negative, negative outlook on
life can be difficult. It's tenuous. It's never consistent. You know, you can wake up tomorrow morning and it's like, Jesus Christ, the car isn't starting and all this stuff, you know, just stuff that just throws everything off. And I had an experience like that this week, and I was like, I refuse to allow that to define my whole day. Right. And it's so little compared to what you have been through, you know, because I have not really lost anybody. So I don't know what that is, but I definitely think that life has so much beauty in it.
Right.
And I think that that's what you're, if I may,
no, absolutely,
that you're trying to convey the message that you've lost something that has been valuable. You almost lost something else that has been valuable to you. And you have instilled all of these things into your children. And then you've gone through what is not a loss, but could have been with your son. And so there's this value that you place on life that a lot of people take for granted.
Yeah. And it's hard to be around those. I mean, honestly, it's hard to be around those individuals because, you know, negativity is just so toxic, you know, and I don't, you know, and I don't wish for anyone to go through what I've gone through. But it's hard to see people react to, you know, stuff like that. And it's funny because, you know, even now, you know, if I get, you know, I have a lot going on, you know, I look at my husband and I, you know, just say, he's so good. I look at my husband, I'm getting a little overwhelmed, you know, and that's just when I know things are starting to affect me. And he just steps in and he takes that cue and he, you know, and it doesn't happen often. I hate to ever be weak, right? But every now and then I'll just get like a little overwhelmed and I'll say, I'm just getting a little overwhelmed. And my kids know what that means. You know, mom just needs, you know, maybe to go cry for a second or, but no, you're absolutely right. I feel like, people do take life for granted and, it's unfortunate, you know, because, we all of us have so much to lose, you know? So it's sad.
But I think that speaks to that individual who is watching this and hopefully will walk away and reconsider the value that they have in their life, because I think a lot of people do feel like they don't have a lot of value for different reasons. And I would never pretend to be that person to be like, come on, you got to pull yourself up and because life is hard, you know, and everybody has a different way of dealing with things. Right. But just to speak to your story, to have the wherewithal to just say that, you know, every day is valuable to me, no matter what, you know, just, that's why I value your time here with us now, is because I know that your time is, you know, valuable. So
I do have a final question. And because this thing, you know, this is an amazing story, an amazing quest to be where you are right now, to be able to pass this, what you've learned, not just academically, but personally. Pass that down to both your family, your children, which share it with your husband, but also sharing it with people that will be going out there and be a part of our society. And those are beautiful markers in your quest of life. But I do have one final question for you. Can you tell me about Move the Clouds and Clear the Skies?
Oh, goodness. Absolutely.
So the tissues, Jesus.
So not that long ago, a couple of I don't know what it was. I was on the way to work, a normal morning, and grief just overcame me. And I'm starting to cry on the way to work. And I get into work, and I have this most amazing coworker, and we've been through a lot together. And I look at her, and as soon as I look at her, she knows I've been crying because my eyes are, you know, of course they're red, right? And so, you know, she says, I don't know if she says, "Are you okay?" or she hugged me or something, and I broke down, and I said, "I don't know what happened this morning on the way to work." You know, I guess overcome with grief. And I heard this song. I'll tell you, I heard this song, and it was literally my son's father speaking to me. Like it was words that he would be saying to me if he was alive, you know. And I'd never heard the song before, and I was just like, oh my goodness, like really today. And so I went home that night, and I was crying at home. My husband's like, are you okay? And I'm like, I don't know what it is. Like it hit me hard today. It wasn't the anniversary. It wasn't his birthday. It wasn't Father's Day. It wasn't a holiday. It just hit me. And I just went into my room, and my husband let me have my space, and the kids let me have my space, and got my laptop out, and I started writing. And I just started writing, and I called my son. I said, T.Y., I call him T.Y. I said, our story needs to be told. We need to help, others. We need to help other kids. We need to help other caregivers, surviving caregivers. And so I wrote my part. He wrote his part. He said, this is in one night. Okay. We wrote a children's book, and he wrote his part, and his part is the story of me telling him that night, of his father being big and strong, and God needing him to clear the sky and move the clouds. And so the epilogue in the back is, my story for surviving caregivers on, bring that greatest attribute out of your loved one, and share that with your child. Yeah. Because religion is hard to understand at that age. So if your loved one was an amazing computer genius, well, there's technology in heaven, right? Yeah.
How does everything function?
Right. So you just and like I said, that night it came to me. You have to pull that most amazing attribute. My son's father was the strongest, man, and you have to pull that attribute, and it helps children understand why he was needed. Okay, my dad has a job now. He was needed, and that makes them feel like so proud, that he was chosen. Yeah. Right. And so, the book was written that night. It's in the editing stage, and I hope to have it published really soon.
Awesome.
Yeah. It's
awesome.
It's amazing.
I have to say that 20 years later, through the eyes of a 5-year-old. With
And the inspiration came from a song. Yeah. From a moment.
Yeah. So
that's awesome.
So yeah, and that song, boy.